The rise of the killer bees, how hybrid swarms swept across the Americas. Chapter 1. The experiment that escaped. In 1957, deep in the forests of Brazil, a well-meaning experiment began. Scientists wanted to revolutionize honey production. European honeybees had been brought to South America centuries earlier, but they struggled in the tropics. They produced less honey, and their colonies weakened under the relentless heat and disease. A scientist named Warwick Kerr thought he had the answer. He imported a new strain of honeybee from Africa, a bee adapted to hot climates, vigorous and productive. His plan was simple: crossbreed African bees with European bees, creating a hybrid that would combine the best of both. But nature does not follow human plans. Within months, a handful of queens escaped their containment and mated with local bees. The hybrid they produced was not a gentle honeymaker, it was something new, something far more aggressive. And once released into the wild, there was no stopping it. The world had just unleashed the killer bees. The new hybrids looked almost identical to their European cousins. To the untrained eye, they were the same size, the same golden-striped insects hovering lazily over flowers. But their behavior was transformed. Unlike European bees, which defend their hives cautiously, Africanized honeybees attacked with overwhelming force. They were hyper-defensive, reacting to the smallest disturbance with sudden violence. A stray vibration, a footstep too close, even the scent of an unfamiliar animal could trigger the alarm. Within seconds, not dozens but thousands of bees would pour from the hive. The difference was not in their venom. Each sting was no more potent than that of a common bee. The difference was in their numbers, their coordination, and their persistence. Once provoked, they pursued intruders for hundreds of meters, sometimes more than a kilometer. The hybrid was not just another pollinator, it had become a collective predator, defined not by size but by swarm. The first reports trickled in from rural Brazil. Farmers complained that their livestock, horses, cows, goats, were being swarmed and stung to death. Entire herds collapsed in fields, covered in writhing black clouds. Villagers spoke of strange new bees that would not let go, that chased men into rivers and houses. By the late 1960s, the deaths of humans began making headlines. A farmer checking his fences was attacked, unable to outrun the swarm. A child gathering fruit was stung hundreds of times before help arrived. Panic grew, and newspapers coined a name that would stick for decades: the killer bees. For the first time, the world realized this was not a local inconvenience. This was a biological invasion. The hybrids spread, colony by colony, through forests and farms. No fence, no wall, no city could hold them back. A new predator had taken wing and it was multiplying without end. By the 1970s and 1980s, the bees were on the move. Each year, swarms advanced northward at a rate of 300 to 500 kilometers, an unstoppable tide creeping through South America. They crossed into Venezuela, then Colombia, then Central America. Every new country braced for disaster. Governments issued warnings, telling citizens to stay alert. Villagers were taught to run in zigzags to seek shelter in houses, rivers, or vehicles at the first sign of attack. Yet despite the warnings, attacks mounted. Entire communities were terrorized when hives were disturbed during harvests, construction, or even schoolyard play. For people in their path, the invasion was like a slow-moving storm cloud, predictable, inevitable, but impossible to stop. Scientists tracked their advance with dread, knowing the bees were heading toward one of the richest targets of all, North America, and with every mile they covered, their legend grew darker. In October 1990, the first swarm crossed the border into Texas. For decades, Americans had watched the headlines, waiting for the moment. Now it had arrived. Within months, the first fatalities were recorded. Gardeners trimming hedges, joggers passing near hives, farmers working in fields, ordinary people doing ordinary tasks, were suddenly chased and stung to death. Unlike the African bees in their native continent, these hybrids had no balance of natural predators and prey. In the Americas, their aggression shocked communities unprepared. Emergency crews were trained to respond to bee incidents like fire alarms. Neighborhoods learned to treat every buzzing hive as a potential death trap. As the bees spread through Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California, panic followed. They were no longer just an ecological story. They had become a cultural fear, symbolizing how one small accident in a laboratory could ripple across an entire continent. To understand the terror of killer bees, you must imagine the swarm. A hive of Africanized honeybees can contain 60,000 individuals. When threatened, as many as half may launch at once. The sound is deafening, a roar of wings that vibrates the air. Victims describe it as being swallowed by a storm, a living cloud that bites and stabs without end. Stings rain down in hundreds, then thousands. The venom itself is not extraordinary, one sting is survivable. But when hundreds inject simultaneously, the body buckles. Pain sears through nerves, swelling closes airways, organs begin to fail. Victims collapse in fields, pursued even as they crawl. Survivors tell of running full kilometers before the bees relented. For animals, there is no escape. Horses, cows, even dogs are overwhelmed, their bodies left bloated and lifeless in pastures. The swarm does not stalk prey, it simply erupts, consumes, and withdraws, leaving silence in its wake. Why are Africanized bees so different? Their venom is no stronger than that of European bees. Their hives produce honey much the same way. The secret lies in their behavior. African bees evolved in a harsher environment, facing predators like honey badgers, birds, and humans raiding their nests. Over time, they developed extreme defensiveness. When threatened, their strategy was not to sacrifice a few guards, but to unleash the colony itself. Hybridized with European bees, this instinct became dominant. The result? Hives that responded to danger with overwhelming force. Scientists found that Africanized bees deploy 10 times more defenders than European bees, and pursue threats up to 20 times farther. Their success is brutal mathematics: more stings, more persistence, more deterrence. For the bee, this is survival. For humans, it is catastrophe. The science is simple. The swarm is not deadlier because of what each bee is, but because of what they are together. Today, killer bees are permanent residents across much of the Americas. From Brazil to the southern United States, their colonies thrive in forests, fields, and even urban areas. Farmers and residents have learned to adapt. Professional beekeepers are trained to identify and manage aggressive hives. Communities are taught to seal garbage, remove abandoned hives, and call experts rather than risk disturbing colonies themselves. And yet, every year, dozens of people still die. A jogger takes the wrong path. A farmer cuts into the wrong tree. A child throws a rock at a hive. The swarm responds without mercy. The story of killer bees is not one of extinction or conquest. It is one of coexistence, fragile, uneasy, edged with fear. A single mistake, a single vibration, can turn an afternoon into a nightmare. And all of it traces back to a handful of queens that escaped into the Brazilian forest decades ago. From the outside, they look like ordinary honeybees, gentle workers of fields and flowers. But inside the hive lies a legacy of survival, fierce, relentless, unyielding. Africanized honeybees are a reminder that nature is not tamed, only bargained with. Power does not always come from fangs or claws, sometimes it comes from numbers. A single bee is fragile, but when tens of thousands rise together, they become a storm. From one escape in Brazil, the swarm spread across a continent, and in their rise, the killer bees taught us a truth as old as nature itself. Unity can turn the smallest creatures into apex predators.